Welcome to the IBC Network podcast, Talk IBC. I'm Terry Lynn Arnold. I have with me JJ Laursen. Julia, I am so excited to meet you. And as I always tell people, I'm always sorry how we met, but you're one of my favorite people. I love to get to talk to you. You bring so much great insight. So let's just get started. Tell us about your diagnosis and how this led to all the advocacy that you're so passionately involved in now.
Yeah. So picture it. Uh, 19. No, I'm kidding. Picture it. Um, I was working as a travel nurse during the pandemic. It was 2021. Um, it was the day after my 32nd birthday, and I was working in the very exotic location of Atlantic, Iowa. Um, and I woke up and yeah, and my right breast was red and swollen and my nipple was inverted. And I was like, that's weird. Called my sister, who's a CRNA, so the one who puts you to sleep in the OR. I was like, hey, I've got this weird thing. And she's like, hey, that's weird. And went to work that night. I worked in the emergency room as a nurse at the time. It was a Sunday. I worked for 3 nights straight and, told everybody I worked with, hey, I have this weird thing. What do you think? And nobody ever mentioned cancer. If anybody thought it, they didn't mention it. We were all just like, oh, it's probably an infection, whatever. See your doctor. So I went home, saw my doctor
Something with you
that
real quick.
Friday.
Let's,
Yeah,
I'm going to say something here real quick. Okay, so what you're describing, it was a sudden onset, right?
yes, overnight,
Good.
literally
That's good.
overnight.
Overnight. Okay. Continue on.
Went to bed 31, woke up 32, and, you know, there we were. Um, and went back to Omaha, where I was from, saw my primary care, and she too was like, that's weird. She was like, it could be an infection. I'm going to put you on some antibiotics, but, and the but is what saved my life, truly, but I'm also going to send you for some scans. Um, Years later, I've asked her, what made you send me for scans? Why did you do that? And she said, I just knew something wasn't right. I just knew
So
in my gut.
clearly, she had not even heard of inflammatory. It was sort of a gut
I never
feeling
asked
that
that question outright. I didn't want to know.
I
She
understand.
had a gut feeling.
But thank God that she said, hey, I've got this gut feeling. There's something here.
Yeah,
So what happened
100%.
next?
So then that Monday, I went for my scans and I thought I was just getting an ultrasound, but they were like, no, you need a mammogram first. And I was like, ugh, whatever. Let's see what all the hype's about. Um, did the
Yeah, at
mammogram.
32, at
Yeah,
32, you never had a mammogram, right? You wouldn't be old enough for another, what, 8 years?
yeah. So I was like, oh, all right, see what that's about. Did that. And then they were like, okay, we're going to do the ultrasound. Did the ultrasound, and the tech was like, I'm going to go get the radiologist quick. And even working in healthcare, it did not cross my mind that this was something bad and weird. I was like, huh, must be some infection. Like, not a thought in my head. um, the radiologist came in, and I just remember so vividly. Um, he kept telling her, take a picture at 9 o'clock, 9 o'clock, 9 o'clock, and meaning the location of the breast. And I was like, wow, some infection. And then there was just this moment when we were done, and all three of us are just sitting there. Mind you, this is during COVID. So my husband was out in the car waiting for me because he couldn't come in. And so it was just me and the radiologist and the rad tech. It was like 4 o'clock in the afternoon. And he just looks at me and I look at him and I'm like, what's up? Like, why aren't you talking to me? And
Yeah,
he's
all
like,
of a sudden things start feeling serious, don't they?
yeah, I didn't even realize though. I was like, what's going on? And he was like, I hate to tell you this, but you are highly suspicious for something called inflammatory breast cancer. And this is um, not great. And you need to see a doctor like yesterday. And he literally picked up the phone and called a surgeon. And the ball got rolling. I was in to see a surgeon within the week, I think. Not for surgery, but just for consult. And he said the same thing, like this is highly suspicious for inflammatory breast cancer. And I had never heard of that. I didn't know what inflammatory breast cancer was. Um, I didn't know why it was bad. I knew nothing. And so he did a punch skin biopsy and it came back positive. And again, I was still just like, whatever. I didn't believe it at first. Working in healthcare,
A,
I was one of
a
the,
huge, it had to have been a huge gut punch.
well, I didn't
Just like
believe
you
it.
walk in thinking this is no big deal, and you're a nurse, so you've seen a lot of scary things, especially being an ER nurse,
Yeah,
right? You're just thinking, oh, this is just nothing. And who thinks cancer at 32,
right.
right? And here
So,
you
yeah.
are trying to process what's happening.
Well, I just didn't believe it. I just didn't believe I had cancer for like 3 weeks because I had just gotten my first COVID vaccine like a month prior. And this is pre them coming out saying, it can cause lymph node swelling and all of that. And I had gotten it in my right arm. So then the week that my symptoms appeared was actually when I was due for my second vaccine. And working in healthcare, being science minded, I thought, well, I'm going to do my second one in my left arm. And so if the symptoms appear there, then I know that they're all wrong. So in my mind, I just kept thinking, well, I'm going to give it a month. I'm not going to believe this because there's no way. Um, but no, it was.
See, and you're
And
the opposite of me in the sense that because you had it, I kind of feel sorry for people in this situation like you, where almost you're diagnosed quickly, and it's you can't even handle that those words in the sense that it's so sudden. I was misdiagnosed for a long time. So then I started getting suspicious, and then I was grateful. Finally, somebody knew what I had. But I've had some people say that the shock of it all, it's good to be diagnosed quickly, get on treatment quickly, but they say the shock of that is a hard process.
yeah, 100%. I definitely didn't process it at all for even in the moment. Um, Still not done processing it. But yeah, so I did um, end up meeting my oncologist in Omaha. I loved her, Dr. Wells, wonderful woman. And I remember I ended up, my husband was allowed to come with me, so we dressed up. I wore my birthday dress that I had bought for my birthday and, went in and met her. And I asked her, what's the statistics, right? Like, what are the odds here? And she's like, well, I normally don't talk about odds, but since you're in healthcare, I'll talk with you about them. And I had always said, if I ever get cancer, because working overnights, you have a lot of these what if questions, you play games. And so I always said, well, if I ever get cancer, if it's a bad prognosis, I'm not doing anything. Like, forget that. I'm taking my money and running. And so she goes, it's like 70, 30, 60, 40 range. And I was like, oh, well,
Hmm.
that's not low enough for me to take my money and run, but it's not high enough to feel super confident in anything either. Um, so yeah, so then I dove in. I joined every group I could. That's how I think I met you. I started learning everything I could about IBC and what that was, what it means, and my life completely changed. I did
It is
trimodal
so
therapy.
it is so bizarre that you walk into a room and then you walk out literally and your life has changed on a dime. You're on the phone, canceling everything, moving everything, changing everything. People don't think about
Yeah,
that sudden switch. They don't. So what
I quit
happened
my
next?
job from the hospital parking lot. Shout out to Atlantic for being so cool about that. um, but yeah, so I did ACT chemo and followed up by surgery. I found out I was BRCA positive. So I had a double mastectomy with oophorectomy and lymphovenous bypass. And that's, I mean, I think if you're listening, you're probably aware, but if you don't, that's when they reroute one of your lymph nodes into a small vein called a venule to help kind of restore lymphatic function. And then I did radiation. So I did the standard 28 and then the extra boost to the scar line. Then I did a year of oral chemotherapy, a CDK4/6 inhibitor. And then I did another CDK4/6, I think Verzenio. That's a CDK4/6 inhibitor, right? Um, I did that, and I think I did that. And then um, I just finished that on May.
So we're recording this in May of 25.
Yeah,
So you were basically in treatment for a couple of years.
4 years. Yeah, I literally just finished May 4,
Yeah.
the Verzenio, and I continue on letrozole. I started letrozole in the December when I was done with active treatment, and I continue on that to this day.
Now, I know in the process of learning about this disease and when we met, you got very involved in advocacy, even when you're still in treatment. Can we talk about that a little bit? About that
Yeah.
advocate
So
place?
what really pushed me to get involved in advocacy was two different things. The first one was I met with a local social worker in Nebraska. And at that point, I knew that I was considered what's called an AYA, so adolescent young adult. In the cancer world, anyone diagnosed between 18 to around 39, depending on who you ask, is considered a young adult. And so I knew I qualified as an AYA. Went and met the social worker, and I said, hey, she said, you're not a young adult. And I said, oh, okay. And this was pretty early
Hmm.
on, so I wasn't confident yet. I thought, well, maybe she's
Well,
right.
32 sounds like a young adult to me.
Yeah.
I mean, that's young for cancer.
And so she said I wasn't a young adult. And she also said not to apply for Social Security disability. She said, don't apply. It's a waste of your time. You'll never get it, and you'll be back to work in 9 months. So I thought, oh, she knows what she's talking about. This is her job. She's the breast cancer social worker. And I didn't apply. Got done with active treatment, run out of money, and knew I needed to go back to work and had just signed a contract to go back to work as a school nurse because there was no way I could go back to working 12-hour shifts and all of that. And that's when I found out that IBC was on the compassionate allowance list. And I,
I'm going to interrupt you here for just a second because when you say you couldn't have gone back to nursing full time, you were working in an emergency room, very long, demanding hours on your feet, really, really quick. Was there some chemo fog brain? Was there fatigue? Was there dexterity issues because of lymphedema? Can you, if you're comfortable, can you say some of the reasons why you felt you
um,
couldn't go into that super hard, fast pace?
literally
And I'm not
everything
saying
you mentioned.
job, but that is demanding. I've worked in hospitals, that's demanding.
Yeah, literally everything you mentioned and then some. And being a
Okay.
travel nurse, I worked overnights, which is a known carcinogen, causes cancer. So I definitely wasn't going to go back to that, right? And then, but yeah, chemo brain was a big one and continues to be one I struggle with. And quite frankly, there's not enough treatment for that, which is when your brain just doesn't work as well as it used to.
And I
Um,
think it takes some recovery time from what we've been through in the treatment, but also I was thinking of something else about your immune system is tanked. And so to be in a hospital setting where you're exposed to God knows what every single day, that may not be the best place for you. And it's
and
interesting you
even,
were told you couldn't apply for Social Security because I remember the moment that you found out you could because we were together at an event and you went, crap, they lied to me. And you practically ran out of the room
yeah,
to go
I
get
was
it
so
set up
upset.
because that system was there. under the government, under Social Security Administration, where IBC is listed on the compassionate allowance list.
Yep.
And that can make a big difference. It doesn't mean you're never going back to work again, but that can make a big difference in your life. And it's money that you've earned, it's not charity.
Well, and I think I went back to work much too soon as well. I felt like this opportunity was in my lap and I couldn't bypass it to be a school nurse. And I don't think anyone was ever in danger. I don't want people to think that. But I think the only person in danger was myself. Um, I never got COVID working in the ER, got it twice working in the schools, which really affected my cognition even more. Um, and yeah, I just didn't give my body enough time to heal. A very smart woman said to me, a great way to find out if you are ready for work is to go sit in like a library, a coffee shop, anywhere. And Carrie's smiling because it was her who told me this. And um, just work for 8 hours and see if you can do it. And did I listen? Of course not. And I wish I had because I would have realized the toll that it really took on my body and how hard it was. Um, the only real saving grace to my time as a school nurse is that I had a really supportive boss, and she would really help and pick up the slack if I couldn't do it. She would let me come in late for appointments. She would let me leave early for appointments because she knew that I was really trying to make sure that I would miss as less time as I needed to. And the kids, it was high school. So the kids, I went in, I had hardly any hair. Um, because I finished in December, started in January, right? And so they all knew something was up, but then once they kind of found out, it helped me get street cred with them. But
Mhm.
they were also just really, really understanding. They knew if I had the lights dimmed in the office, it probably meant I wasn't feeling well. And, don't come in like a pack of bowls raging. Um, but yeah, even that though just ended up taking its toll in um, October of 23, my oncologist was like, listen, you did not survive cancer to kill yourself working. She was like, you either need to go on intermittent FMLA to really deal with these long-term side effects you're having, or you need to quit because you're going to kill yourself.
I
And
think people realize truly the toll, and I do think we need some recovery time. So I'm glad that you did find out about the Social Security. Did you find the process difficult?
yes, I've only actually just started the process. Um, so after my oncologist told me, hey, get your life right, um, I went on intermittent FMLA. Um, so what that means is I could work, but if I wasn't feeling well or had extra appointments or whatever, I could take that extra time off and go to those things without my job being in jeopardy. And so I finished out the school year because that was really important to me. The situation I walked into was that the nurse before me had passed away in the middle of the school year. And so
Mhm.
I really didn't want to leave those kids in that same situation again, where they lost a nurse in the middle of the school year. So it was really important to me to not inflict trauma on these children. So I finished out the school year again with all of those helps and systems in place, right? And then I took off for the last year. I wasn't ready until just recently to admit this might be my new baseline forever. Um, I've done tons of testing, neurologic testing, physical testing, all of it. And it's been really hard to admit, like, hey, I can't work the traditional, you know, 9 to 5 or 7 to 3 like I was. Um, and that's what disability is. It's not so much saying you're unable to work, it's you're unable to work at the capacity you were. And I had to
And that must
really,
have been very difficult because not that people don't love their jobs, but I think nursing is a unique calling. And I would think that would have been a very hard thing for you to say, I can't do this, especially because you're young and you think I'm going to bounce back. Or people say, oh, just push past it, fake it till you make it. I know for me, that first year out of treatment, and I don't want to scare anybody who's listening to this who is facing the cancer journey and thinking, I don't want to do this, but I was not okay for a year. I basically just sat in a corner and drooled. I feel like I did not have, I was a 24/7 person. I didn't ever forget anything. I didn't have to write anything down. I had to pace myself. I had to write things down. I needed a little time. And it didn't mean that I didn't have things to offer, but I couldn't do it as quickly, as efficiently. I needed a little bit more time.
Yeah. And do you want that person to be your
What's
emergency
that?
room nurse? Do you want that person who can't remember everything to be your emergency room nurse? I don't
No,
know.
no. 'Cause I worked in the physical therapy department next door to the emergency room, and I saw the demands of that field. And also, my job when I was young in physical therapy, it's a very physical, demanding job.
Right.
It's it's not a desk job. I'm not saying that being a school nurse is easy, but at least you can sit down every once in a while or something like that. But when you're working in a on your feet job, even just a sales clerk, you're constantly moving. Now, so you got through treatment, you got the right information about Social Security, so you're just now applying, but you've been doing things this last year that you say you took off, which again, people might say, well, she's doing these things, but you're getting to pace yourself
Yeah,
and you're doing things about advocacy that's helping you learn as you also give back. So can we talk about that? Because I think those are some important things you're doing.
my favorite. Love it. But I want to circle back really fast. So
Okay.
the other thing that led me to advocacy was I had joined some Facebook groups specific to inflammatory breast cancer, and everyone kept telling me, go to MD Anderson, go to MD Anderson. Um, but no one, because MD Anderson has one of the few inflammatory breast cancer clinics and the first inflammatory breast cancer clinic in the nation. But no one could really articulate to me why I should go. And working in healthcare, I knew I was getting the standard of care. I knew I was getting the care that MD Anderson advised. So I didn't understand. And it wasn't until that second COVID diagnosis in October of 23, when my doctor said I was killing myself, that I finally went to MD Anderson, figured out why it was so important. And then I was like, there needs to be people telling people in an articulate way, in a concise way, why you want to go to these clinics, what makes them different, not just, oh, they're the best. That's fine. We have pretty good healthcare in Nebraska. We have like a bazillion schools. Like it's fine. Um, but there is a difference. And so learning that difference is what kind of made me realize I want to learn even more. And so my grandmother passed away, and she was like my best friend. And she left me just a little bit of inheritance, and it was enough to kind of go to my husband and say, listen, you work remotely, you can continue doing that. There are all of these cancer events and education experiences and conferences and camps that I've been wanting to attend, but I haven't been able to. And so I think we should give up our lease and hit the road. And so that's what we did. We had our first stop be ASCO, American Society of Clinical Oncology's huge cancer conference. I think it's probably the biggest in at least the United
This
States.
is about 40,000 attendants.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
40,000 people. And I'm so naive at the time. I thought I was just going to walk in and be like, hi, I'm a patient advocate. Somebody hire me, right? But it was a great experience. I learned so much. And some things I wanted to learn, some I did not. And um, from there, it snowballed. And we attended, oh golly, I have it written down somewhere. It was like 14 or 15 different cancer events and over the course of the last year. We just kept extending our travel time because we were loving it. And now we've landed in Colorado Springs. And we are based out of here now. And we'll see where the life kind of takes us. But advocacy has been amazing. the more I'm in it, the more I get involved. It kind of started um, way back in Omaha. My There's this wall at our cancer center, and it has pictures of people and little articles about them. It's called the Faces of Hope. And I have to walk by that wall every time I go in, and I was like, I wonder when the last time was they updated this. And so I mentioned it to my lymphedema therapist, and she said, that's so funny. They're looking for people to put on there. Do you want me to tell them you're interested? And I was like, heck yeah. And so from there, it snowballed. That opportunity led to being asked to be on a panel at the Nebraska Cancer Coalition conference. And then I reached out to you and I said, hey, I'd love to maybe host some booths locally on inflammatory breast cancer. And you kind of gave me the training and made sure I knew what I was talking about, and the IBC Academy and all of those things, and had my first booth about IBC at my sister's Keeper Walk in 2023 in Omaha, which is a walk for Black women affected by breast cancer. And IBC, the statistics say that it affects Black women more than white. So it was really amazing to educate on this disease that many hadn't heard of. And I had oranges there, and I said, "This, is what your breasts look like, and the cute orange skin, and all the things." And that was one of the best experiences. And then and then from there, eventually I started um, an adolescent young adult support group for Share Cancer Support. We meet once a month on Zoom. It's myself and two of my really good girlfriends, and we lead the support group for any young adult affected by breast cancer, not just inflammatory and all of that. Then I did Project Lead in La Jolla. That is a 6-day intensive, science intensive on cancer and research and how research is done. And from there, I did the Department of Defense every year funds, I don't know what it is now, but they fund research for um, different diseases. And because people in the military can get cancer, right? And so part of their grant giving is they have patient advocates serve on the panels right alongside the scientists. So I was selected for that. So I did that last year as well, which was so cool. It was a lot of work. Even working in healthcare, I had to watch hours of videos because I was like, what am I reading? But it was
I've
so,
done the Project Lead course. I'm a Project Lead grad too, and I've reviewed on the DoD, and it's something that I really encourage people to get involved in because they don't realize we get to be at that table when somebody's a little intimidating with the same equal voice as the physicians and researchers, but we can bring a unique perspective to it that helps them. So it's something I'm glad that you got to do.
yeah, it was awesome. Hope I can do it again. We'll see. Call your senators, tell them to fund it. um, and yeah, so DOD. And now recently, I have kind of branched off into the clinical trial world. So I'm serving as a patient advocate on two different clinical trials out of MD Anderson. One is the TRIP trial, and that is utilizing psilocybin to alleviate anxiety and depression in cancer patients and cancer survivors. It's open to survivors now too. So that's really cool. And then I am getting involved in some inflammatory breast cancer research as well at MD Anderson as a patient advocate. And people are always like, how do you get involved? And another very smart woman told me very early on, AKA Terry, show up, show up, show up, show up. So when I
Cannot
was,
tell you enough how much it matters to physically show up to events, not virtually, if possible, physically.
yeah, so I was in Houston. This is a perfect example of showing up, right? I was in Houston for lymphedema treatment, one of the many lovely side effects. If you're watching, here's my custom sleeve. Thanks, Erin. Shout out. And I was down there to do a month of wrapping because I had a really bad lymphedema flare. And I knew, and I had just torn my ACL at a cancer camp for young adults. It was so fun though. So I was kind of immobile. And Terry reached out and said, "Hey, there's this conference going on. If you want to come and sit in a different place, make use of your time." And I was like, "Heck yeah!" So I went, and one of the presenters was uh, Dr. Moran, who's the head of the TRIP trial, and he I thought that's really cool. And so, I'm just sitting there and it's his turn to speak. And he gets up from my table. He was sitting with me the whole time. And he goes and he gives this great lecture on the history of psychedelics and, you know, what's led to this trial. And then he comes and sits back down. And I was like, oh my gosh, I have to introduce myself. This is the universe telling me. And so I went and introduced myself and I said, if you're ever looking for patient advocates, I would love to help. He said, yes, please come to our next team meeting. And I did. And it's just snowballed from there. And now I'm out here telling people to go to MD Anderson and take a psychedelic. It's kind of crazy coming from a nurse, but I truly believe in it. They're having great results and it's showing great promise, and not just for um, anxiety and depression, but for other things too. Nerves are kind of the unresearched, I don't want to say maybe under researched part of cancer. I don't feel like there's enough research going into how the nerves and the neurons and that system plays into cancer development. And so they're finding super awesome things out. And the ways that this can help is just phenomenal. So, yeah, it's just been awesome. And now I'm actually getting on the speaking circuit too. I'm on a panel in July in Austin for advanced practice providers, AAPOS. We're giving a talk on the ecosystem of patient advocacy. So
That
that would
sounds
be really
great.
awesome.
Well, I
Yeah.
want to make sure I know the dates of what you're doing in July because Austin's just a stone's throw from me. Since I live on the far west side of Houston, it's door to door from my house to downtown Austin is 2 hours, so that's easy.
Ah,
I'd love to come and cheer you on.
yes.
It's so exciting to see what you're doing because, you're getting yourself as close to the research too. So hopefully you can help others, but you're helping yourself along the way. And I think it's interesting when that people say go to MD Anderson is the best. Well, there's a lot of really good centers, and obviously, and then, but when you say that nobody told you why, I think the why is really important. We hear it's the best, but we don't hear anything else. And there was little bitty things that I wanted to talk about, like should you get the COVID shot before you have your pet or after you have your pet, or what is the order? How do these things play into us as a cancer patient? Or those little nuances I find get kind of glossed over other places.
Yeah.
And that
Even
may not be the best example, but I just feel like that there are it's a different microenvironment to be at an MD Anderson or a Dana Farber or someplace like that specializes in IBC because this disease behaves differently. And I think you need that learning curve of how it behaves differently because even if another place is following the algorithm, sometimes the disease isn't following the algorithm. And it's like, oh, this is a weird little thing happening. Oh, well, we'll just keep going forward. No, you might need a change. And that's where the experience gets in. And hopefully, then that experience can be disseminated more into other places. But you, as an advocate, are making that happen. Now, what is kind of coming up for you? Because I know you can't tell me everything you're up to right now, but you've got some things in the works. So, how do you want to wrap this up about maybe a
Terry,
takeaway for someone? Also, I think we need to do a shout out to your husband, Mitch, who I know the partners are co-survivors, but I view him as a unique one in the sense that he's right there with you doing advocate things. When we have the ultimate meetup, he's led family sessions have been very popular. Um, I love how he'll come up to me and he'll say, I don't want to get anything too heavy, but what's the meaning of life? And I'm like, there you are, Mitch, right off the bat. I love it. He's so cool. but I think to have that support is incredible. But also, he's made a place for himself because I think our co-survivors are not taken care of well, and we need to better that. But so, like, do you have some kind of takeaway you want to give? If someone has hesitancy about going to a specialty center, do you have any advice? And then, how can they follow you to know the cool things you're doing next? Let's do those three questions. Takeaway.
Takeaway.
Let's do
Um,
that one first.
okay, takeaway. Show up.
Show up.
Show up.
Just
And
whatever it is,
yeah,
treatment, advocacy, whatever, just show up.
show up. And if it is advocacy, that's, I feel like, and I don't know if you agree with me or not, but people ask us all the time, how can I get involved? I want to get involved. And it's, you have to know what you like doing. Um, so kind of know yourself and show up, right? Like, I don't really like getting involved in the whole policy and Washington, D.C. and all of that. Like, that's not my vibe. And I know that about myself. So I don't go that direction, right? I go the other directions. I'm very involved in the young adult world because that's what I'm passionate about. And I've made so many friends in this community and I've had them die. And I'm passionate about making sure that we aren't dying, one, and two, that they know about the resources out there to get the best care possible, right?
Yeah,
Which kind of leads
I think
into your second
I think that's a
question.
good thing to say to show up, but also know yourself because in that way you not that we can't always learn new skill sets or do new things and stretch a little bit, but also what are you good at? Because it might seem easy for you, but it's not easy for somebody else. And so you can bring your gifts to the table, know yourself, and then show up, and then we can pace ourselves and do it. Okay, that's a great takeaway. Now the second thing was I said
MD Anderson.
takeaway why go to a specialty center, and sometimes people resent it, acting like it's just for the privileged, but I think we can also bring knowledge back to our community. So what would be your why to try to get to a specialty center?
The why would be to have the most up to date resources and opportunities. And it's not always just about yourself, but the future too. An upcoming trial is going to involve getting information right from diagnosis, essentially. And if you're not at those cancer centers, like, the MD Anderson, I mean, I just keep dropping them, so I'm just going to keep saying them. But if you're not at MD Anderson, you wouldn't know about that trial and you couldn't help advance the future. And so,
That's very important because you and I are standing on the shoulders of giants that ran before us. We are well because someone was in a trial before us. We are well because someone gave a sample that made something get studied. So we can pay it forward, if nothing else, by showing up
and I think a
at
big thing
a
too is
specialty center.
people don't realize a trial doesn't mean you're getting worse treatment or you're not going to get treatment or that. It
Mm-mm.
can be as simple as you're getting a blood test. You're just getting a blood test and they're checking certain things in your blood every along the course of your treatment. And you can do a lot of that wherever you are located at. And that can shape the future of medicine, you know? Um, so yeah, definitely for the trials aspect, but just so you have the most up-to-date IBC information. Um, while I was getting treated, radiation was switching to twice a day versus once a day. And
Yep.
I knew about that. And in my head, it was like, what's the difference? It's the same dose. And my radiation oncologist in Nebraska was on board to let me do twice a day. But I was the one who said, I just don't get the reason. It's the same dose. Like, I just don't understand. And so I decided not to. And I think if I'd gone to MD Anderson, they could have articulated to me, well, the reason is IBC cells grow so much faster. And so the thought is that if we do it twice in a day, we might get some of those that would be waiting, until the next day. And you're hitting it twice as hard, truly. And that's
Again,
just
it's
something
about
kind of,
the why, and we aren't told that.
yeah. And I was trying to disseminate all this information on my own from Facebook and everything else. And if I had been at MD Anderson sooner, they probably could have explained some of that why a little bit better.
Yeah. Now, okay, so how can they follow you? Because you go, a lot of people call you JJ, but your name is Julia Larson.
Yeah.
And so I know that you do a lot on social media. So which social media would you like to be followed on?
Instagram's great. JJ's Joyful Journey 89 is great. We will be announcing some big things very soon, within the year, hopefully. So that's exciting. But yeah, I also am always posting about the opportunities that I've been to or that I know about. And that's how you find out about them, right? And so if you follow me, you'll probably find out about things you didn't know existed. And you may see a cute dog or two. So who doesn't like dogs?
I know Oliver's great. Now, and one thing that's interesting to me is when you go to all these cancer conferences, to me, you're meeting with the true experts, which are the other patients. There is a wealth of knowledge there. And you talk about these places. And so that might help somebody decide, hey, this is worth my weekend, or this is worth a place to volunteer. And I'm glad that you're in Colorado Springs. 'Cause I know there's some projects you want to get involved there about the Scars of Beauty with somebody else that we know that has IBC and just various things. So they can find you on JJ's Joyful Journey on Instagram. We also have you cross-linked on our website because you've given a lot of stories of hope. You put things into Walking on Quicksand. I hope you'll consider doing another submission about some things you're doing right now. And so then people can also, like you name it, JJ's Joyful Journey about having cancer, but you are trying to find the joy in life, even though we aren't trying to blow smoke, that this sucks, right? This is awful. Having cancer is awful, but there is some joy in it, and we want to live past it and do better. And you're doing something about that. So I hope they follow you on your Instagram, like and share it and all those good things to, keep it up in the algorithm and support what you do in the future with the support of Mitch and your little dog baby Oliver.
Yeah, I'm a baby boy who you may see at a conference. He's been known to crash them. So
I know I think he didn't he have his own Facebook page or
he
Instagram or
does.
something now.
He
I
does.
thought I saw it the other day and I was laughing. I think that's great. Well, Julia, thank you for being with us today. And I think we've kind of covered all the things that we'd hoped to do. I know you and I could talk forever, but I'm just so glad for your wellness. And I'm glad that you're taking the angle of paying it forward and helping. And send all my love to Mitch, okay?
I will.